chunk into October. We like to start our meetings with a moment of silence, so let's go ahead and do that now. And please rise to flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have Councilor Facer is online, and Valerie Lovelace and Rob Pell are absent this evening, but we do have 6 councilors present. And we have a proclamation to start us off tonight. If y'all can read that on the screen, you have better eyesight than I do. Whereas we recognize the annual National Day of Advocacy, Imagine a Day Without Water, held on October 21st, 2021, as an organized effort to educate the public about where water comes from, where it goes, and the challenges local water providers face. That clean, accessible, and reliable water is critical, and it is necessary to maintain and rebuild our water systems. And whereas the City of Grants Pass staff treat and distribute over 2 billion gallons of water, manage the treatment plant, 8 reservoirs, 13 pump stations, and 188 miles of water mains. And whereas water and wastewater crews work diligently to operate and maintain the infrastructure that provides more than 140 gallons of water per person per day to 10,477 utility customers. And whereas the water and wastewater infrastructure that brings water to and from homes and businesses is essential to the quality of life and economic vitality of Grants Pass. And whereas investing in our drinking water and wastewater systems will secure a bright and prosperous future for generations to come. And whereas water and wastewater providers nationwide are grappling with aging infrastructure. And whereas being innovative and collaborative about water conservation and water reuse can establish a paradigm of water management in the United States that will drive job growth and economic vitality. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and Council of the City of Grants Pass recognize water is essential to the quality of life and economic competitiveness, and acknowledge the importance of educating the public about the value of water through the Imagine a Day Without Water campaign. And we do hereby proclaim October 21st, 2021 as Imagine a Day Without Water. And we have Adam Smith here from our water treatment plant to receive the proclamation. Did you want to say a few words, Adam? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. As we imagine a day without water, on behalf of myself and all the men and women that take pride in providing water services to the city, we appreciate you taking the time to recognize water as one of our most necessary natural resources. And as we move forward in planning and working on a new water treatment facility to replace our current, we will take this proclamation to heart moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you and your crew for all the good work you do. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment on the proclamation. I really appreciate all the hard work that our water treatment staff has done forever. I mean, ever since the water treatment plant was built, 80, 90 years ago. And I personally have been a drinker of city water since I was a child, and it's done pretty good for me. So thanks.
Thank you. All right, next up we have 2 quasi-judicial hearings So I'm going to read the notice here for both. At this time, I will open the public hearing to consider applications filed by the Historic Building and Commission. These applications are to have ordinances that designate both Riverside Park and Caveman Bridge as historic local landmarks. We will begin hearings with a staff report, followed by a presentation by the applicant, statements by persons in favor of the application, statements by persons in opposition to the application, an opportunity for additional comments by the applicant and staff. After that has occurred, the public comment portion will be closed and the matter will be discussed and acted upon by the council. Is there anyone present who wishes to challenge the authority of the council to hear this matter? Do any councilors wish to abstain from participating in this hearing or declare a potential conflict of interest? Are there any councilors who wish to disclose discussions, contacts, or other ex parte information they have received prior to this meeting regarding the application? In this hearing, the decision of the council will be based upon specific criteria which are set forth in the Development Code. All testimony which apply in this case are noted in the staff report. If you would like a copy of the report, please write that on a note to the city manager and one will be provided. It's important to remember if you fail to raise an issue with enough detail to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The hearing on Riverside Park will now begin with a report from staff.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Brad Clark with Community Development Department. Kind of representing this application to start out with, but I do want to acknowledge two members of the Historical Building and Sites Commission with us tonight, our chair and vice chair, Chair Ward Warren and Arden McConnell. So much of the work that you see here reflected on these slides is really attributable to them and the work of the HBSC, and I do feel like I would be remiss if I didn't sort of just acknowledge that we did lose one of our HBSC commission members this week, Bill Richardson. So we're sort of keeping him in our thoughts as we honor these two properties here tonight, since he was a part of moving this forward. So the subject is to designate Riverside Park as a local landmark per section 13.400. And the inclusion of the park will serve to meet the intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance for the cultural impact that it offers. What's interesting about this application is that this same property was brought into the national park system this last year. So this is, sometimes you see this reversed, where you often have a local landmark designation happen and then followed by a National Register nomination. In this case, it's actually reversed. It was added to the National Park Service, felt this was such an important property that they honored this as being National Register property last year. So we're sort of just following up at the local level and wanting to acknowledge this property as a local landmark. So it is located at 300 East Park Street. It's 3 separate tax lots in 2 different sections. One of the parcels is between 6th and 7th Street, and then the majority of the property is located on the east side of Southeast 7th Street. So there are a number of structures and sites that are in Riverside Park. A few of them are noted here. There's just one that's non-contributing. The maintenance yard building built in 1960 is a non-contributing building. In the world of historic preservation, those contributing and non-contributing just sort of refer to the quality of the building, the character, and whether or not it's contributing to as a historic resource. And as you can see, most of them are. The park caretaker's house is contributing, the upper restroom and garage, that's contributing, and the baseball field and the playground and lower bathrooms. This property was donated to the city by First National Bank in 1906. There's several memorials that are scattered throughout the park. Those are listed here, and I'm sure that either Ward or Arden could give some background on these, but everything from there's a couple of veterans monuments in the park, as well as the Rose Garden Memorial, and some to individuals who have contributed much to the park throughout the years. So in order to be entered into the city code as a local landmark, there's 4 criteria that have to be met. And the Historic Building and Sites Commission reviewed these criteria in a public hearing and through a staff report. And they found that all 4 of these criteria were met by Riverside Park nomination. It really is not a cost implication. This is a process to bring a property into the list of local landmarks. It's, for the most part, an honoring kind of procedure. The implications, like I say, with cost are really limited. We do review them in a separate manner with certain types of development permits or building permits. If it's on a local landmark, it would be brought up for a special kind of review. But that little extra staff time is really all that we're talking about in terms of cost. So the call to action, the date November 13th, 2021 is the 120-day deadline. And as I mentioned earlier, it's recommended for approval by the HBSC, and if you were to approve it, then you would direct staff to prepare findings of fact, and this would be finalized at your November 3rd meeting. So that's all I have from a staff perspective. I don't know if you want to acknowledge.
Thank you. Yeah, Ward,
Chair.
did you want to say anything on this? If you could come over to this one, that'd be great.
So, good evening. I'm really happy to say that I enjoy being here representing the Historic Building and Sites Commission, because we don't bring to you controversial or political things, and we don't come in with our hands out asking for a lot of money, but we work really hard as a commission. And to honor those sites in our city that are landmarks, and obviously both Riverside Park and Caveman Bridge, which follows this, are icons in our city. And you know, you might say, why did it take so long to recognize these 2 as landmarks? And the answer is well, actually that's a good question. But for the last 7 or 8 years, the commission has been really busy with some major projects, and we've worked really hard with staff, and we've accomplished a lot. And all of those things are worth celebrating. And so Riverside Park was designated, as Brad mentioned, last year about this time by the National Park Service and recognized on the list of the National Register of Historic Places. So that was a big one, but we somehow it never got listed as a landmark. So it just adds another honor, another layer of significance to the park, and it is something to celebrate. And I guess the next one is the Caveman Bridge, which is separate. So. But I know it's a small town and things tie in together, and it's interesting that Arden, who's here and is the vice chair of the Historic Commission, lives right across from the park, and she's always had an interest in the park. She lives in a historic home there, and you may have noticed in Brad's presentation that the land was donated to the city in 1906 by the First National Bank. And that happens to be a historic building that I have downtown. So it's kind of neat how things tie together. But the First National Bank was the business that donated the property to the city in 1906. So anyway, things tie together, and I think this is really, it's again, something to celebrate and something that's very positive for the community. Any questions that I can answer?
Rick?
Thank you, Ward. I appreciate what you're doing here. Just to clarify any potential confusion, I know when something is put on the Federal Register as historic, a lot of owners have to go through many hoops in order to do anything. Does this designation affect the buildings that are on there to make it more difficult if any modifications or upgrade needs to be done?
Well, there was the consultant that the city engaged, who's done quite a bit of work for the city over the years. He's the one that really put the official report together for the National Park Service. So it was his research that where you saw up there that the caretaker's building and some of those things are considered contributing resources, and then like the city yard is not. So if the city, say, wanted to refurbish the caretaker's house, which is from around 1920, and Arden and I actually went and toured it not too long ago, and for lack of maintenance, it's in not very good shape. But if the city decided to either refurbish it and put it back in use, then the exterior renovations would probably come before the commission, just more for advice. I mean, we're really there to kind of help out and say, is this appropriate or isn't it? So it wouldn't be any big deal. It's a small building, but that would, if it was the city yard and you were going to do something with the city yard, it wouldn't, because it's non-contributing.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you, Ward.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else here who wanted to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here who wanted to speak in opposition of the application? All right, in that case, I will now close the public. I'm going to assume you don't have further comments, Brad? Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and the matter is now before the council for your consideration. Joel.
Well, I would make a motion to approve Riverside Park as a historic local landmark.
Are you moving to adopt the ordinance and have it read by title only, first reading?
Yes.
Thank you, Joel. Is there a second?
Yep, I'll
Thanks,
second.
Brian. All right, is there any discussion on the motion? Vanessa?
Yeah, today's presentation was wonderful. There were some pieces of history that I wanted to highlight in addition to today's presentation. This piece of property has endured some pretty significant things since the city accepted the donation in 1906. It has survived a Great Depression, a historic flood, now 2 viral epidemics, the first being polio, World War II, not mentioning the countless community events that have been hosted at that location, which also provides some really historical significance. And I think I also did want to highlight that when the land was accepted and donated in 1906, it was actually outside of the city limits for 41 years. It wasn't in the city limits until 1947. So I think that this is a really prime example of community leadership having a vision for the future of the community. And I think it's something that we can continue to learn from.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, so Joel, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 6-0. First, you're just pointing for first reading. Go ahead, please.
An
Karen?
ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass designating Riverside Park, 300 East Park Street as a historical local landmark.
Thank you. Rick?
I'd like to make a motion that the ordinance be read by title only, second reading.
Thank you. Is there a second? Brian, thanks. Any discussion on the motion? All right, Rick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 6-0.
An ordinance of the council of the city of Grants Pass designating Riverside Park, 300 East Park Street as a historical local landmark.
Thank you. And Brad, we are ready for a public hearing on Caveman Bridge.
Okay. There will be some similar content. So this application in your packets, I neglected to mention this the first round, but this starts on page 23 of your packet tonight, where there is a little bit more information and background than what we have in the presentation. So similar subject to designate Caveman Bridge as a local landmark per section 13.400 of the Development Code. And the inclusion of the Caveman Bridge will serve to meet the intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance for the cultural impact that it offers. So this local landmark designation recognizes the special character and interest of a site that's part of the heritage of the city. Some very interesting background in terms of the engineering and the design of this very highly recognized landmark in the city. It is located on Highway 99 right-of-way. It does not have a specific tax lot, and so for that reason, we did reach out to the Oregon Department of Transportation and asked for them to review the application and to sign their consent that they would agree to this nomination going forward and becoming a local landmark, which they did. So the 1931 Caveman Bridge, it's a bookend to the Redwood Highway, and this was kind of highlighted recently with the dedication of the monument recognizing the Redwood Marathon, where that race took place between San Francisco and Grants Pass, and there's a lot of other sort of similar history between that event and I think some of what's being talked about in this application. It was engineered by Conde McCullough, who designed several other bridges. He's known for kind of a decorative avant-garde style. This particular style of Caveman Bridge is also called a march or a rainbow arch. And it illustrates the importance of this vocation as both a functional crossing and a crossing that demanded the admiration of all those who viewed it. You can't probably see it on the bottom of the slide, but on the right-hand side, it does talk about this is a hand-tinted postcard from 1936, talking about Caveman Bridge, and Conde McCullough, who moved to Oregon from Iowa in 1916. So as I mentioned, there is a little bit more detail about the bridge in the packet, but we did review this material with Historical Building and Sites Commission. They reviewed the 4 criteria, and they found that the application meets the criteria that's required. So they are recommending approval to the City Council as a landmark. Again, we don't find any cost implications related to this application, and the call to action is there along with the recommendation.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Brad?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Brad. Is there anyone here who wanted to speak on behalf of this application? Did you want to speak again, Ward? Yeah, you're welcome to, but if you...
So yeah, I just like to add that a couple years ago, we had a community celebration down at the site of the Redwood Empire sign and had a really large, successful turnout for that. And at that time, some people from ODOT that work at ODOT were at the celebration and spoke, and a couple of them historians, and we talked about it that day a couple years ago, and they were very excited about making the Redwood Empire sign landmark and also Caveman Bridge. And so here we are 2 years later. Again, it's another community icon. And I started to say earlier, because of all the other projects that we've worked on for the last few years, and we've gotten a little bit, it's a little bit of a breather, and we've looked at it and said, the local landmark list has not been updated since 1981 for 40 years. So we're just trying to make up for lost time here a little bit. And I believe that it's the landmarks in the community that tie the community together. The park, the bridge, businesses like Grants Pass Pharmacy, which became a landmark a few months ago, those bring the community together. Cities that I've seen where they tear down their landmarks or they don't honor them, from what I see, they also don't have much community or community spirit. So again, this is something to celebrate, and I'm honored to be here. I also want to say that just on a sad note, just a few days ago, we lost one of our commission members suddenly, Bill Richardson, and he'd be very excited that what we're doing tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on behalf of the application? Is there anyone who wanted to speak in opposition to the application? All right, at this time, I will close the public hearing and turn it back over to you, Council. Joel.
Well, I honor all the work that's led up to this point, and I move to adopt the ordinance designating the Caveman Bridge as a historical local landmark and have it read by title only, first reading.
Thank you. Rick with the second. Any discussion on the motion? Brian?
Yeah, I just want to thank HVSC for their continued hard work and everything they've done over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right. Joel, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 6-0.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass designating Caveman Bridge, Highway 99, as a historical local landmark.
Rick?
I move to adopt the ordinance designating the Caveman Bridge as a historical local landmark and have it read by title only, second reading.
Thank you. Kurt with the second. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Rick, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Grants Pass designating Caveman Bridge, Highway 99, as a historical local landmark.
Thank you. It's hard to imagine what we had on that list of local landmarks if we didn't have Caveman Bridge, but it's definitely the local landmark. Thanks to the Commission for all your work on this, and we'll work on getting those things added to the list. Next up, we have a council action item is a resolution allocating $3 million of the American Rescue Plan Act funds to eligible projects within the Water Capital Fund. And who do we have presenting?
That will actually be Adam. He'll be presenting, and we're getting that set up right now.
Oh, it's our first remote presentation, huh?
Looking at the screen, we might have to highlight me as the speaker.
We can hear you, Adam.
Hello.
Hello.
So Adam, I did give you control, but it didn't take you to full screen.
Can you double click on mine? Will that do it?
Negative.
If you right click on mine, is there a highlight option?
It's a lot
There we
closer,
go.
but not.
Is
Ooh, got it.
there we go.
Whoa. And he lost. There it is.
Oh, there he is.
There we go. Thank you, Jason, for your help, and thank you for everyone's patience. I've got a fairly short presentation for you tonight on the American Rescue Plan Act and allocation of some of those funds to water capital. Subject in summary is that it'll be $3 million of the $9.3 million of the American Rescue Plan Act funds to eligible projects within the Water Capital Fund. This, along with contributions from the Urban Renewal Agency, should help to offset currently scheduled water rate increases. The relationship to your council goals is to facilitate sustainable, manageable growth and to maintain, operate, and expand our infrastructure. To give you a little bit of background, on July 12th, staff presented options for the use of the ARPA funds. One of those was water capital projects, and very specifically talked about the water treatment plant, as that is going to be the largest capital project the city has taken on. According to our calculations, we're showing that a minimum contribution of $3 million from ARPA, along with the URA's contributions, could help to eliminate the currently scheduled, there's 2 more rounds of 5.28% usage rate increases. Now, all of this is based on several assumptions at the moment, and so the final total savings and adjustments to rates will depend on the final debt amount as well as the final interest rates that we get on the multiple rounds of debt that are issued. Then on August 30th, staff was presenting survey options for community outreach, and at that time, council gave staff direction to allocate $3 million to the water treatment replacement project. This is a slide you've seen before, just outlining the potential savings for each $1 million of ARPA funds that were allocated to water capital projects, starting at that $3 million, going all the way up through $9 million with several options there. The one potential challenge with allocating all $3 million of those ARPA funds to a single project, specifically the water treatment plant, is that both ARPA funds and bond proceeds have to be spent within a certain amount of time. So we could find ourselves in a situation where we have too much money, or excuse me, we have more money than we can spend in the amount of time. If that was the case, then we would have to reduce the amount of principal that we issue the debt for, and based on the assumption that interest rates are going up, and that is what we are anticipating at the moment, we then have to borrow less money at the most advantageous interest rate, so that would increase costs. A potential solution to that challenge is that allocating $3 million to water capital fund for any eligible project would essentially eliminate that timing challenge I just spoke about, but it still provides the same opportunity to offset those scheduled rate increases. So overall, it just adds flexibility with the same benefits. And just as a reminder, projects that are eligible under the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund are those projects that build or update facilities to improve water quality, transmission, distribution, and storage systems, or to consolidate or establish drinking water systems. So we believe we have more than just a single project that would fit into this category that we could potentially use these ARPA funds on and still get that same benefit of being able to offset the rate increases. For the cost implication, as I mentioned before, the potential challenge of restricting those funds to a single project, the water treatment plant, that actually could increase our interest costs, assuming that interest rates are going up. And any city funds that are used on other projects just means that that's less funds that are available for the water treatment plant and would therefore require additional debt. So this whole resolution, $3 million is a fairly significant amount, and we appreciate the opportunity to get that solidified in a resolution. But based on that direction that was given to allocate $3 million to the water treatment plant, this resolution adds a bit more flexibility by allocating it to eligible projects within the water capital fund. So a slight distinction there. The call to action is today, but that is at council's discretion, and your alternatives are to adopt the resolution as recommended or as adjusted, or to not adopt the resolution and potentially allocate those funds differently. And with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Good to hear from you. Any questions? Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So I appreciate the distinction that was made in the presentation. My question is, if we change it so those funds are for the eligible projects in the water capital fund as opposed to strictly for the water treatment plant, will we have the same kind of guarantee that we will be able to forego those 2 additional rate increases?
So overall, the water rates that were established by the rate study several years ago is based off of maintaining operations in the water operating fund, and also to maintain improvements and or corrective action that might need to be taken on existing infrastructure. So that rate is not only for the water treatment plant. It's very much a significant portion of it, but there are other things as well. So by any contribution from ARPA to any eligible project does have that same benefit of being able to offset the rate increases.
Thank you.
Joel?
So Adam, just to clarify your previous answer, the answer is yes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor De La Grange did mention a guarantee, and I tried to put the disclaimer in there that it really depends on the total amount of debt that is finally issued and the final interest rates. So ideally, we can completely eliminate both of the 5.28% rate increases, but depending on how things go, we might be able to eliminate all of one and most of the second one, something like that. So there may be slight adjustments, but overall it will definitely be a huge savings to the water fund and will definitely help to offset rate increases.
Brian?
Thanks, Adam. I have one other question. Earlier in the presentation, it talked about contributions from ARPA and then also contributions from the Urban Renewal Agency. And I just wanted to clarify that those are contributions that are already in the Urban Renewal Agency plan. That is not any additional contribution from Urban Renewal, correct?
So right now, we've not really solidified a specific dollar amount of contribution from the Urban Renewal Agency, but right now it is in the plan for the Urban Renewal Agency to contribute up to 18% of the total debt service for both the sewer fund and the water fund. So all of my calculations took into account that 18% of total debt issuance, and based on my assumptions, that 18% with the $3 million contribution from ARPA comes to about $17 million over the entire life of the URA.
Very good. Thank you.
Rick, you have a question?
Adam, you said the time period for the ARPA funds is what, 2-3 years that we need to disperse those funds? Is that the time period we're looking at?
That's correct. I can't remember the exact dates off the top of my head, but we have to allocate the funds or designate what those funds are going to be spent on within 2 years, and then I think we have to spend them within 3 years.
So we have some wiggle room before we actually have to make a total commitment to preserve our flexibility. Is that correct? What I'm saying is that tonight we don't, while we can approve the modification if that's the direction we want to go, we can still take a firm stance that we want all that money to go to the water rates, but the 2-year mark will be a time of recognition where we have to then finalize based on that date where we're at in the process, and if we need to move it into other projects.
Ultimately, the flexibility that this provides is there may be other smaller projects that are still eligible that we could go ahead and get out of the way sooner rather than later and use some or all of these ARPA funds on those. By not spending city funds on those projects, those funds are then available for the water treatment plant when it comes to that point in the project timeline. But yes.
Okay, that helped me. Thank you.
Joel?
So Adam, do you anticipate any challenges in spending the $3 million within the time frame allotted?
Not with this added flexibility, and I'm sure Jason could probably speak more to that, knowing the timelines of the different projects better than I, but from the discussions that we have had, we'll definitely be able to spend the funds in time.
Okay, thank you.
Adam, I have a question. The resolution that is in our packet tonight mentions eligible products within the Water Capital Fund, but you are actually recommending that we would change that to be eligible under the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund? Is that?
No, the resolution would still be to the Water Capital Fund. My mention of the eligible projects under the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, those are the ARPA requirements. So one of our projects would have to meet the ARPA requirements to be eligible, and if so, then one of those projects would be in our Water Capital Fund and could use those ARPA funds.
Okay, so Water Capital Fund gets the job done.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Adam. Is there anyone from the public who wanted to comment on this? Please come forward and tell us your name.
My name's Gordon Langenbeck. I'm very pleased with the $3 million. I would recommend
Gordon, can I get you to pull your mask up?
Sorry. I'm pleased with the $3 million, but I would like to see, when you do deliberations on the other $6 million that are available, that you bump the cost benefit of that other project against every $1 million more that you could put against this. And I don't think you'll find a single project that will have the return on investment to the taxpayers of this town.
Thank you. Anybody else wanted to speak on this? All right, Council, we will turn it over to you. Does anybody have any comments? Brian?
I appreciate staff giving us that flexibility. Not sure that we'll need it, but it's good that we'll have it just in case. So that said, I move to approve the resolution allocating $3 million of the American Rescue Plan Act funds to eligible projects within the Water Capital Fund.
Thank you, and Kurt Collins seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? No? All right, Brian, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 6-0. All right, that brings us to public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on items not related to a public hearing or council action item for the council. The intent is to provide information that is pertinent to the city's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the council as one body, not to individuals. At the conclusion of public comment, council will have an opportunity to respond. The meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, or other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. If you have a question regarding any government-provided service or a current city policy, please contact the city manager's office in an attempt to resolve the matter. We have several people here to speak tonight. First up is Rika Brown.
Rika Brown, Grants Pass. Water rationing has consequences. The 80s were considered a wet decade. Water was so cheap to use that we thought of it as free. It was the height of sprinkler irrigation. 1986 was the first year we heard two non-scientific themes all over the media. Burning fossil fuels is causing global warming from too much carbon dioxide, and fresh water is a scarce and precious resource that we must conserve. Change began quickly as some cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, and Seattle grabbed that idea and ran with it, lowering base rates and charging high unit rates for using water. The area around those cities and to their east got drier and hotter. The first sign of trouble was the fires in the Hollywood Hills around Christmas, as katabatic Santa Ana winds, caused by high pressure, cold, and dryness, flowed down out of the Sierra Nevada and blew every spark into brush fires with high-speed wind and high heat at lower elevations. Seemed like nobody connected the almost yearly fires to the change in water pricing. It being a Southern California problem, people joked about the winter fire season in Southern California. Meanwhile, water rationing rates were spreading across the country and around the world. Grants Pass started them in the 90s in a small way, but City Manager David Frazier and the City Council got serious and introduced tiered rates in 2006. Grants Pass started getting fires from dry weeds and brush, and wildfires got closer to the city as lightning storms turned dry. Jokes about California's fire season stopped in 2017 when the Carr Fire burned much of Redding in August, and the Tubbs Fire burned huge, tight subdivisions in Santa Rosa in October. In November 2018, the Camp Fire burned most of Paradise and killed 85 people. These were all katabatic wind-driven fires. In 2019, the West got a brief reprieve from big fires after Congress legalized hemp, which had to be watered. In 2020, we had a rainy May and June and a cloudy July. But after water masters made farmers stop using unpermitted water in July, temps rose to well over 100 degrees in August. High heat built up a high-pressure bubble that covered the west coast from Mexico to Canada. September 8th brought us katabatic winds from highlands under that dome, causing the biggest fire disaster of the last 50 years as fires started in cities and burned them all over the western half of our west coast states. Thank you.
Next up, Fawn Dapper. Sure. Husband David Dapper.
Thank you. Hi, my name is David Dapper. I live on West Park Street. I'm here about Lower West Park Street between Ringette and Tussin Park. On the north side, there's a county public works, and there's homeless people decide to set up camp in their trucks and campers out there, and they're not allowed to. But the sheriff is stretched thin and with other more pressing issues, and the city police aren't allowed to mess with unless they're out on the roadway. But they're not allowed to park there. The sheriff has told us and the police have told us. But due to the conflict, could we get no parking? There's only myself and my family and my nephew and his family. And right next to Tussin Park, there's another deep set property and two empty properties, one of which the neighbor behind us owns. So there's no need for any of us that live on the street to park our cars ever on that street, or I've never seen anyone do it. But just last Tuesday, I go out to get my mail and they're out there, not the most pleasant. And what are you looking at? What are you going to do about it? I'm currently on 3 different types of PTSD medication. My sertraline is maxed out at 150 milligrams, my Seroquin at 25, and my propranolol at 10 milligrams. My wife hasn't been able to, in probably 6 months, she won't even go out in the yard and enjoy her flowers in our front yard anymore. I can show you pictures of what we see across the street. And like I say, they're not allowed to park, but this is what's waiting out when we open our front door, our garage door, to take our dogs to the park. My wife has been sexually harassed. That's part of the reason she just quit going out. These people, they don't live anywhere, have any reason to act any kind of way for anybody else's safety or sanity. We were planning on selling our house and just going. Where Officer McGinnis asked why we'd let them run us off, the homeowners, instead of running them off. If they could stay down at the park, if you could please help us, just no parking signs would help the police. Because they don't need, then they wouldn't have to be called out and waste all their resources. So please help us.
David, are they parking on West Park Street?
Yes.
Okay, near Tussing.
Yes, between Tussin Park and Ringette. And the other side of the roadway is county, and that's where the confusion begins. I'm sure this officer could probably explain it better.
Okay, I know where that area is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dawn, did you also want to speak? Okay, come on up. Sorry, it's Fawn.
Fawn Dapper, please. Oh, sorry, nervous. What we kind of wanted to make the point of is when we open our front doors or our garage door, these people are sitting, they put their chairs and they sit and they're watching our house. So when we leave, we're uncomfortable because they're watching our house. There are times I duck in the car so they only see one person leaving. And we don't feel it's fair, especially since they're not supposed to be there, that we have to keep living this. And we just want some help. I'd like to be able to go back in my front yard and weed and enjoy my beautiful Japanese tree. I don't really know what else to say. Just, if we could get the no parking signs, and then we could call the tow company instead of have the police come out they're out all the time. And we take pictures of them doing drug deals, or I open the door and there's someone pooping or peeing. It's kind of overwhelming. That's about all I have.
Thank you. All right. Next up is Gordon Langenbeck.
My name's Gordon Langenbeck. I'd like the council to revisit the $175,000 that they gave to the county for the runway extension. You say, well, why? Number one, as you just noticed, the county elected to spend none of their $16 million of pandemic money, put $5 million toward the runway. So that says to me, why is a city doing something that is for the county and they won't do anything about it? And who really needs a longer runway in the short term? In the long term, I can't argue that a longer runway will help the whole county. But in the short term, Dutch Brothers has about 90% of the business that will benefit from this, so they don't have to refuel in Medford and go forward. And if you look at landings or takeoffs at that airport, you'll find the bulk of the things are Dutch Brothers that need this longer runway so they don't have to refuel. Now, if the council's hard over on not doing that, then why don't we go back to the county and say, look, here's the money, we'll loan it to you, and you can have increased fuel revenues, and you repay us with those fuel revenues. And the last thing I'd say, the next to last, is good old Borsema, hell of a good guy. At $4 billion, he could fund that $5 million of runway with 0.2% of his wealth. And if in fact there's a cost benefit, he'll jump on it because he's a smart, smart guy. That's the thing I'd look at. And then if you got back the 175, and I know you did it in 4 increments, so there may not be all of it available, I would just love to see that money applied to the water treatment plant. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you. All right. Council, did anybody want to review public comment? Brian?
Yeah, regarding Gordon's comment, I just wanted to ask Aaron have we made that first payment to the county on that yet?
Yes, we made the first payment of about, I think it was $45,000, $46,000. And then it was the way the resolution was passed a couple months back is that it would be an annual installment.
Okay, thank you. And to Fawn and David, I would just recommend, like, I'm happy to have us consider getting no parking signs down there. I think that's, you know, if it's warranted, I think it's a good idea. But as you're seeing code violations, continue to report those to public safety, and public safety can act on those. So thank you for being here. Thank you.
All right, Karen, did you want to review the emails, please?
So there were 6 emails with concerns about transients and fires at Dollar Mountain, 2 emails with concerns about the homeless at Depot Park, 1 regarding winter and the urban campground, 1 regarding the Allen Creek Road Improvement Project design and the use of concrete, 1 supporting river access, 1 with concerns about water and sewer rates, and 4 emails support adopting a construction excise tax.
Thank you. All right, next up we have the consent agenda. And we're missing both DJ and Valerie tonight, so is anybody...
DJ's here.
Oh, that's right, DJ, you can read it remotely. Do you want to read it remotely?
I understand that there's a couple of starred items tonight. It looks like the first one is the resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the City Hall canopy re-roof project. So I think it's wise to just handle that one first.
All right, Jason is ready for us.
Thank you. I have a brief presentation on removing the City Hall arcade roof. That is what it's called in the plans, as well as a comparison and to talk about the repair of the council chamber roof. The relationship to your council goals is providing cooperative leadership between council staff and maintaining and operating our infrastructure. In July of 2020, council received the PAVE report from the contractor Marina and Company with numerous recommendations as it pertained to your facility management group. Since that time, the facilities group has been working very hard to meet the highest priority needs identified in that plan. Public Works Department presented an update in June of 21, including that a new facility manager had been hired, that facilities had moved to a more proactive from reactive maintenance program to where we are actually going out and doing maintenance on things before they break, as opposed to waiting for that to break. And then also the municipal asset capital plan had been put out to bid. And I didn't include it in my presentation, but what I will tell you is that a contractor has been selected. We are in negotiations on that scope of work, and we will be bringing it to you, I believe, on the 20th for your consideration. In September of 2020, shortly after Public Works had taken over, we found out that facility staff were getting quotes to replace the roof on the arcade, breezeway, and the section of the council roof. However, that project only included new roofing. It did not include fixing any of the low spots in the roof. It did not include fixing any of the structural portions that were failing. And so we put a halt to that project. We hired ZCS for, I think it was $2,500, $3,000 to perform a quick evaluation of the structure. They had already performed seismic work on all of the municipal buildings, so they were very familiar with all of the structures. They provided two alternatives with a rough order of magnitude cost. And when I say rough order of magnitude, that's a very high level. Alternative one was to repair the entire structure and apply new roofing, including revising the whole deck sloping to make sure that the roof could drain. Flat roofs are notoriously hard to drain. Water likes to pond. Anywhere it ponds, if your roof fails, that water ends up inside the structure. They guesstimated that that was about a $92,000, $93,000 project. Alternative two were to repair the critical portions of the council chamber section right here and to remove the rest of the freestanding arcade sections, and they estimated that that project was about a $56,000 project. I want to go through a couple of the photos here, and this is the conditions as they stand today. When we look at this section here, this is the roof section. You can see where water has come through the roof. It has gotten into the tongue and groove and warped these boards very severely. We don't know the total extent of the damage on top of this surface, but it is likely pretty significant. The photo here shows one of the beams that is supporting the roof structure. You can see that the rot is extensive. This post has to be replaced in its entirety. On the roof section here, you can see that the water has ponded in this large area. I didn't get a picture, but if you follow my laser pointer out off the screen here, just a little bit farther off the screen, there's a very large pond. That water actually leaks in and drips through the light right outside this door over here. It's really got a bad section. This on the left, on the right here, this screwdriver you can see is buried all the way up to the hilt. This wood is rotten. This entire beam also must now be replaced, and this is holding up the roofing structure. And just a couple more photos of the roof as it's coming apart. So I made the decision that it is probably in our best interest to remove the canopy. We do not have sufficient funds to repair and maintain the entire roof structure as it exists today in the facilities group. The capital costs are estimated to be 60% lower if we do remove the roof, the structure, as opposed to repairing the entire structure. We believe that construction materials are going to be hard to match. Likely it would necessitate replacing all of the tongue and groove and all of the beams, but possibly not. Definitely the tongue and groove material is going to have to be resourced to try and get it to match. And then also, because so many of the beams exhibited signs of failure, rot, we didn't know how many of those were going to be able to be reused. The plan that we have in place actually tears down all of the arcade and reuses the salvageable portions in the section that remains, which is essentially the two sides of the council chambers, which will still leave quite a bit of shade and cover for patrons coming in and out of the council chambers, but does remove a fair amount of shade as it wraps around. And to be quite honest, Aaron and I have to start carrying an umbrella when we come to the meetings and it's raining because we can't get out of the rain anymore. So we did receive two bids for the project. This is where it gets a little bit interesting. They ranged from $70,500 to $187,625. Those are very difficult to evaluate. $70,000 is in line with the engineer's estimate. $187,000 is quite a bit higher. We did talk to that bidder. They priced in quite a bit more risk. They did not believe they were going to be able to salvage as much material as we believe that they will. They did not believe that the tongue and groove material was going to be able to be reused and that they were going to have to replace more material than reuse. And so they priced that into their quote, which is not a bad way to go. Freedom Builders was the lowest responsible bidder at the $70,000, and we do recommend that we award that contract to them. Whoa. And I quit advancing. Hang on. sorry. So the cost is $70,500. Revenues are available within the Municipal Building Land Fund, and the project currently has a cash balance of $386,000. There will be minimal staff resources required to carry the project forward. We do have a tentative call to action date. The quote is good for 60 days from the bidder. We would like to get that on, and your alternatives are there in front of you.
Thank you. Joel has a question.
Well, Jason, I just wondered, why wouldn't we go with that lowest bid?
I would recommend that we go with that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Earlier in the presentation, you said something about us not having the capital in that fund to do the replacement, but on the previous slide here, it says the project currently has a cash balance of $386,000. So are those other funds already allocated to other projects?
So they are. That actually was the funds that were allocated to the HVAC project. And if you remember, we brought that to you and we had to cancel it because we didn't have enough funds. This project was really not on our radar until we really took a look at it, and it's being done by necessity. When I say that there aren't funds, we would just not consider it a prudent use of those dollars to repair it and then still have to maintain it forever when we haven't done a full condition assessment on the entire building. And so taking it down has little impact. If we decide at a later date that it provided a lot of value, we could come back in and rebuild something that was a little bit separated, so you would have two separate canopies in there.
Okay, so as it sits, this project would be taking $70,000 away from the HVAC project.
It absolutely is.
Okay. And then my other question is maybe a little bit more of a step back, but I see that we requested bids we advertised on the city website through the Daily Courier and the Daily Journal of Commerce. And do we have other avenues for soliciting bids from contractors? Do we have the ability to create a list of contractors that we can send things to just so we can have more bids to choose from in the future?
So that is a really great question. What I will tell you is that the listserv that we utilize from our city website is huge. All of the local contractors have signed up through our website so that when we release a bid, it goes to all of the local contractors. The reason we use Daily Journal of Commerce is almost every contractor in the state of Oregon subscribes to that service because that's the clearinghouse for bids across the state and across the West Coast. So between those two mediums, we are reaching probably nearly every contractor that we can. We do not do a direct email, but like I said, all of the local contractors have signed up through our website and get that immediately when we release a project.
Okay, so that would be in addition to the
Yes, it doesn't mention it there, but when we put it on our website and push it out, that actually goes out directly to all of those contractors.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, DJ, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you.
Did we want to vote on this separately or just information only?
I think it was just questions. Nobody's asked for it to be removed.
DJ Phaser
is Joel now
exiting.
Oh no, we lost him. Joel.
That's not good. We lost DJ. DJ, hopefully you come back. So I would suggest that we just leave it on the consent agenda. And we clarified and good questions, and we just leave it on there and approve it along with the rest of the consent agenda.
I mean, I guess if anybody wants to ask for it to be removed, we have the opportunity. DJ has texted me that he dropped the call, which we already knew. So I'll go ahead and proceed, I guess, with the consent agenda while we're waiting here. We still have a quorum. So item A was authorizing the City Hall canopy re-roofing project. Item B is executing a contract for work crew labor with Josephine County. Item C, authorizing city manager to adjust the salary schedules for non-bargaining employees.
DJ Phaser.
Is now joining.
Hey,
Go ahead
DJ.
and finish that out, Sarah. I got a drop call.
We understand. I started reading it for you. We are to item D. Do you want to pick it up or you want me to continue?
Go ahead. I would hate for another mishap. Thank you.
Okay. Item D is a resolution authorizing the city manager to extend the agreement with Advanced Maintenance Services for street sweeping services for an additional 5-year term. Item E is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a wastewater master services agreement with Carollo Engineers. Item F is a resolution allocating, we actually moved that one, sorry, and already voted on it. Item G, a motion approving the minutes of the city council meeting of September 15th. And then we have a number of minutes for Bikeways, Walkways, Historical Building and Sites Commission, Committee on Public Art, Tourism Advisory Committee, and Collaborative Economic Development Committee. As our motion. Vanessa.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Second, Rick. Second from Rick, thank you. Vanessa, how do you vote?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
All right, consent agenda passes 6-0. Brings us to matters from mayor, council, and staff. So I will kick it off. First, I just wanted to comment, Jason, that I am a little disappointed to hear that you and Aaron actually own an umbrella, because you know what they say about real Oregonians. We don't, okay? That said, we had really beautiful weather last weekend for Art Along the Road, and our COPA committee put on a really nice show. It was not the first year of the event, but it was their first year hosting it, and hopefully you all made it down to check it out. But we had a kiddie takeover of the street when we ran out of squares that Rob had helped sponsor. I don't know how many squares there were quite a few, but we ran out of them on Friday, well before evening even started, and we still had Saturday left to go, and the adults were all kind of scheming about where we could put additional squares so that the kids could have more places to color on the street, and they just took care of that problem for us. They just colored everywhere. And it was pretty cool. So the kids and families were out there having a lot of fun, and the musical acts were all great. And we had a bunch of featured artists, and it's probably, I haven't seen it since it rained, probably all gone now, but that's the fun of that event, is just that it's kind of a fleeting thing. But it was a good event, and we'll be looking forward to it next year. And then my other comment is just that I am still working on that vaccine promotion idea. I've talked to quite a number of different providers in the area, medical providers, over the past few days. And so I was hoping to have something to send you all before tonight, but I'm not quite there yet. So I will get it taken care of this week and let you all see it before I forward it to the county. Hopefully next week. With that, anybody else have any comments? Joel?
Well, I'd just like to commend Gordon for coming forth on the airport, and I think that you don't want to jerk people around and give them funding and then take it away, but that loan thing where it gets repaid, I think makes a lot of sense and doesn't jerk people around. So I think in a future council session we need to take that up.
Okay. Anybody else? Brian?
Yeah, may I respond to Joel's comment?
Go ahead, DJ.
I'm sorry for butting right in there. Joel, if I heard you correctly, are you asking for something to be addressed on the near agenda, or when that comes?
Not at this time. I'm just making a comment because that's the agenda. I'm learning.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Anything else, DJ?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Joel. I'd like to have that conversation at a future date. It's not super pressing, but when we have time. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is, and I don't totally know how to talk about this, but basically, I know that there's a certain amount of days before we have to do certain things. And for example, right now we're dealing with the urban campground, and I know we have 2 45-day periods that have to occur between hearings. And I remember this happening earlier this year with another topic. I don't remember the exact topic, but as I understand it, we have an agreement with the county that it is 45 days, but it actually is only required to be a 30-day period, if I'm remembering correctly. So I think it would be prudent of us in the future to maybe have a discussion on whether or not we would prefer that to be a 30-day period instead of a 45-day period, just to keep things moving along. This is the second situation this year I've seen it come up where it's slowed things down when I don't think council has wanted things to, and it seems like a purely elective thing and a kind of a secondary agreement with the county that maybe doesn't have to exist. So I know that was pretty rough, but just wanted to get that out there.
That's the time gap between the UAPC hearing and the city council meeting. Is that what we're referring to?
Yeah, well, it's the time period before the UAPC meeting. So before a public hearing is held at the Planning Commission, what that agreement says is that we have to notify the county. It's not on all land use applications, it's only on those comp plan amendment and development code amendment. Those 2 applications is where we are required to notify them 45 days before the Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, but the law would only be 30 days.
Right. Well, the state is the 30-day. That's in the ORS. The 45-day, Council de la Grange is right. That's per the intergovernmental agreement that the city has with the county, and that's just addressed in that agreement. That's not a state required. Yep.
All right, thank you. Anything else, Brian? Okay, anybody else? Vanessa?
Yeah, I'll be the third counselor to support asking revisiting that conversation about the $175,000 without going too much into the detail. I'm sure people remember my stance on it as not supporting, so I would be interested in recuperating those funds in the future. I also wanted to remind the community that we have a couple of openings on our committees. One is the Housing Advisory Committee with some special qualifications. Applications are due by October 11th, and also the Urban Area Planning Commission due by October 15th.
Thank you. Anybody else? Kurt?
I'll get in there. I want to say again, I support Gordon's concern, and I think everybody on the council here has heard me say that before. And so I give Gordon props because Brian flipped his position. When he and I talked about it, he kind of shut me down. So yeah, let's kind of get our status on that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Anything further tonight? Joel?
Well, it's nice to get out a little early, but I would just encourage everyone, it's awful easy to get things off of Amazon, and that bypasses our local merchants, and so when you can and when it meets your interests as well, I would encourage everyone to shop locally and take time to do that, because that money gets recirculated in our community instead of leaving our community.
And buy American.
Thank you. DJ, were you hopping in there?
Yeah, I'd like to just talk for a second about what Brian had mentioned about the IGA with the Board of Commissioners and the UAPC. That's a topic that we've been discussing with the Board of Commissioners of adjusting that IGA. And I just wanted to say that I think that's a valid request, because I think an adjustment of that IGA is coming up soon in concert with our rezoning effort. So we can add that to the list of negotiations with adjusting that IGA. I don't think there's a problem with that.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, since we're throwing things out there, I just want to remind everybody to spay and neuter your pets.
Thank you. I think we have officially covered everything tonight. Staff, do you have anything for us?
I just wanted to remind council that provided you with the RFP for Ramsey that we'll be publishing, and we're hoping to get that out, and any responses by October 12th will be great. And then also the G Street survey, if you have any final comments before we publish that. Thank you.
Thank you. Brad?
We got 2 notices this week, both positive. One, HUD gave us approval for the 2021 annual action plan that you recommended approval of in August. So that basically gives us our marching orders for about $480,000 for 2021 on how CDBG funds are spent. So that's nice to get that formal approval letter. And the other one is we received notice 2 days ago from the State of Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development that our application for the housing production strategy we are awarded that. So we'll be setting up a contract with the Eco Northwest, who will become the city's consultant to prepare that. That'll be probably about a 10-month effort. So that was a competitive process, and so Grants Pass is fortunate to get that award. So we'll be starting to work on that next week.
Thank you. Jason?
One super quick item, the site clearance work is done at the new J Street property. It turned out amazing. I am going to be able to report back to you at the next meeting how much under budget we were on that change order. The contractor ended up doing an incredible job of sorting the material, and remember we had said that it was going to take them too much time. It ended up not taking them that amount of time, and they didn't take any of the recyclable materials to the landfill. It all went to the recyclers at a fraction of the cost of the landfill. So we're going to be significantly under the change order budget, which is great.
All right, Chief?
I just wanted to share with everybody, if you recall, the police department and 911 dispatch has been working on an accreditation, statewide accreditation process for quite some time. We did apply for an Office of Community Policing grant in the tune of $150,000 for both 911 and police. Unfortunately, we did not get it for 911, but we did receive notice earlier today that we will receive $75,000 to help us with the accreditation process for police. So that's going to be substantial.
Thank you. Are we done? Vanessa?
I have to reply to that, Chief, that although 911 did not receive that grant, as someone who personally works with them in my employment, they're absolutely wonderful. So if that counts for anything, it's not a financial grant, but kudos to your dispatch. They're great.
All right. Hey, Brian, what?
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Rick. All in favor of adjourning this evening, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Good night. We'll see you next Monday.
Okay.